I'm gonna hit record.
Yeah, that's fine. No rush.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is being recorded, just so you know, so that we can share it out later. I didn't want anybody to panic. We have a few people that are coming in right now, so I'm going to let them get admitted, and then we will get started. We have a wonderful turnout. Wonderful. Okay, I think everybody has been admitted. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the Tennessee School Counseling Association for our talk today about helping our teachers and families as this unique school year ends. It's been very different and unique. Just so you know, we are being recorded if you did not hear that, and I will mute everybody. But if you have a question or a comment, you are welcome to use the chat box on the side and type in your questions, and I will field them to Stephanie's way so that we can get your questions answered for you. Okay. All right, we have a few more people coming in. Just give me one more minute. I want to make sure before I introduce you, we have so many wonderful friends joining us. This is so wonderful. Okay. Looks like there are about 50 of us now. So,
oh, wow. That's awesome.
How exciting.
Yeah, I'm just trying to fix my lighting because I'm realizing that it's like, there's not even any sun, but oh my goodness, it's like a spotlight on my face. So
well, you are the star of our show today. So I
have an actual spotlight, I guess.
I think it is perfect. Well, welcome everybody. This is a wonderful treat for us. If you guys aren't familiar with Stephanie is a school counselor in Texas and is an expert in all things school counseling, particularly helping our students transition. She also has an expertise area in ESL. I will let her tell more about herself at the beginning, but I got to meet her through presentations at the American School Counseling Association. So she has presented on a national level. So it's a real treat for us today to have her present to us virtually. I think that tells us everything. I've got everybody muted.
Okay.
And we are ready to begin. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, wait, hold on one second. Let's see. Okay. Go ahead. Let's see. Stephanie, I'm afraid that I muted you. Give me 1 second. There's so many people on this wonderful list that I'm having to scroll down to get your name. Okay.
No problem. I'm going to fix my...
Okay.
Okay. I think that's a little better for lighting. I felt like I was all right there. Okay, can you hear me? Are you ready for me?
We are ready.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Stephanie Lerner, and I'm super excited to be here. As I think all of you are experiencing, I'm trying to figure out the virtual world, and I thought I had a nice seat in front of my bay window, and then I realized like I couldn't see anything because there was too much light. So I think I'm good now. I closed the curtains. So let me pull up my screen and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you are able to see the screen that I've pulled up. If not, or if you have any problem, just chat in the chat box, and Laura's keeping an eye on that. She'll let me know what y'all are seeing. So let me start off by saying first, thank you so much for tuning in this very unusual time. I know a lot of us have many more responsibilities than we're used to. So I really appreciate your time and your effort in trying to be a calming and safe place for so many people, your family, your students, colleagues, and especially when so many of us are not feeling very safe and calm ourselves. So just know that I really appreciate you being here, and I thank you for all you're doing to help out right now. So a couple welcome and logistical things before we jump into hopeful endings and happy beginnings. In case you haven't downloaded this hopeful endings, the distance learning resource we're going to talk about, I have some instructions here on my screen for how you can access it right now. I think it's really helpful to have it up while we talk about it, just so you can kind of follow along and see what I'm talking about. So the way that you would find it if you don't have it available right now is go to my website, which is schoolcounselorstephanie.com. Let me turn on my little spotlight pointer. Okay, so I'm right here. So if you go to, just open up another tab on your laptop or your phone, a browser tab, schoolcounselorstephanie.com, and then you go to the counseling resources tab on my website. So if you're on your laptop, you'll see this tab right at the top of my website. If you're on your phone, then you'll see like three little lines at the top of the website on your phone. If you click on those lines, then you'll get this option of counseling resources tab. Click on the picture that says hopeful endings and happy beginnings when you get to my counseling resources page. Then click on the red download button. It takes you to another site, and you're going to either see a red download button or a green download button. I think if you're on your phone, it might be green, but red, green, it should say download now. It's a free download. And then open the PDF once you see that download. So I think most of you already have this through the Zoom, but if you don't, then now you have your own copy. And so here's all the steps to go through finding that. So what I'm going to do with this presentation is I'm going to present it just like I would to parents or teachers. So if you're a parent or a teacher, then you can just follow my lead and you'll see how to use this. If you're a counselor, because I suspect we have a lot of counselors with us today, basically what I'm going to be doing is modeling for you how I would present this to my staff or my parent community. So you can kind of just do with yours the same thing I'm doing with mine if you have that opportunity. And what else? What else? Let me see who's here today. So if you would use your chat box, which your chat box is either going to be at the bottom of your screen or up somewhere at the top. And if you would write into your chat box, what hat are you wearing today as you watch this presentation? Are you a parent? Are you a teacher? Are you a counselor? I know some of you are all three, so kind of let me know how you're looking at this presentation. Are you wearing your counselor hat, your teacher hat, or your parent hat? Because that helps me to know sort of how to tailor it for our audience, and we'll give you a moment to write those chats in, and then Laura can just let me know most of what she's seeing. I might
I
try
am
and look
seeing
at
a
that.
lot of people who are putting their school counselor hat on today and some social workers, which I find just so awesome that they've joined us.
Yay,
A
social
couple of us
workers.
have their parent hats and their school counselor hat on. They're wearing double hats today,
Yes.
but the majority have their school counselor hats on.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so yeah, then I'm just gonna go through this like I would for a parent or teacher, and then school counselors, social workers, you'll be able to sort of see how you could implement it with yours. So with that being said, going. So this page here, I think I lost my little pointer. Let me put it back on. This is maybe like one of the highlights that I've learned from just working virtually is this little spotlight pointer just brings me such joy. You know, we have to find happiness in the little places we can find it. So this page, I just want to give you just a quick introduction of who I am and how I'm able to be here talking about helping kids sort of come to terms with the abrupt and very unusual closing of schools this year, or I should say closing of school campuses, because I think most of us are still actually in school session, and just also how to sort of support kiddos through the summer with, social emotional learning strategies and just get through this time we're in. So I am a school counselor. I've been an elementary and a middle school counselor since 2008 in Texas. And last year was my last full-time year of being a school counselor. This year I'm transitioning into more speaking about school counseling, teaching school counseling. I write school counseling books and counseling books and ESL books. So just sort of trying to find that balance between part-time school counseling and writing and speaking. And I was sort of finding a good balance until February. And then, yeah, I don't know. Now everything's upside down. Who knows what will happen? So that's kind of my background. When I was full-time school counselor, I was in a Title I district, 2 different campuses, and so very high poverty, high trauma, a lot of cell skills needed pretty much on an everyday basis. We as the school counselors got a lot of practice working with that. If you need to find me, you can always find me at my website, which I just showed you that one, where that one is. Also, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, of course. I love Instagram. Really, the only Facebooking I do is cross-posting. But I love Instagram, and I take a lot of pictures and I do videos. I'm going to post a video a little bit later today. I do a video every Tuesday on school counseling hacks and how to help kids right now with what we're going through. And I do that on my School Counselor Stephanie Instagram page. So if you like social media, you can follow me there and kind of see what I'm doing in the school counseling world. And then if you ever want to get in touch with me directly, here at the bottom is my email, my direct email. Questions about this presentation or just an idea you have or something you want to talk over, you're welcome to always reach out to me. Okay, so the next screen here, as we get into the resource, is instructions for how to use it, and it has a paper-based kind of set of instructions and then a distance learning set, because obviously that's most of what we're doing now. So that's there if you need it, and I'll reference this a little bit throughout, but most of you will be able to just follow it on your own. This page here, the next page, just kind of sets up the counselor for what we're talking about. And here's our ASCA standards, materials. If you're looking at this just as a parent or a teacher, probably for this page, this would be all you need. It's the materials part. And then here is where we actually get into our lesson plan or activity plan. And, you know, if you're a teacher, it's just following that lesson plan along. And there's a little bit more of it in there. So where I would start with this as a parent or teacher is to first read over the entire resource and just kind of get familiar with it, also as a counselor or social worker. And then if I was using this with my own child, I would sit my kiddo next to me and go through the resource starting here. This is sort of where the student part begins, the child part begins. And I would just go through each slide, do each activity with my kiddo sitting right next to me. Now, if I was watching this or using this resource as a teacher, I would do it a little bit differently. So if I was using it as a teacher with my class, what I would do is videotape myself teaching through the student presentation part. So that would be this slide, these slides, and then these. So I would just teach through this to my, you know, YouTube or my Google Classroom, whatever I'm using, and then upload it to my online platform, whatever my school's having me use. And I would also upload a PDF of this student closure activity, the presentation. And I would delete the pages of it that don't relate to this presentation. So when I would post it on my online platform for students and counselors or social workers, if you're going to use this as a guidance lesson, you could do the same thing. I would just delete like the activity plan and the, you know, front cover and things like that, things students don't need. And I think everybody nowadays knows how to delete a PDF page, but if you don't, because I'm going to be honest, I didn't about 3 weeks ago. I've learned a whole bunch of new stuff with all this. On this page here, it tells you, it gives you a link and tells you how to delete a PDF page, so you can. Okay, so that kind of sort of gives an overview of how I would use this, either, as an educator, being a counselor or a teacher with a whole class, or with my own child sort of sitting next to them. So let's jump in. And in case we do have any parents here, let me just kind of put out the disclaimer that this is a very social emotional learning lesson. And so, if you're a parent without any background in this field, social emotional learning, feel free to simplify it to whatever you need for your comfort level, because it's a lot and it might be overwhelming. And I think that if you're using this as a counselor or a social worker, that's a good thing to say to your parents and your teachers also, that this can be simplified down as easy as they need it to be, because certainly we don't want anyone to get overwhelmed with it and then they feel like they can't use it. Okay, so basically I would start, of course, on this historic and momentous decision page. Oh, and before I jump into it, let me say one more thing about differentiating for different levels. So the really neat thing about this resource, in terms of like what book it uses and how it uses bibliocounseling in this, is it is really appropriate for almost any age level. And that's very unusual in a counseling resource. I make a lot of counseling resources, and if I want them to go for different ages, I have to put a lot of different like leveled activities in there for different ages. But this one, because the picture book that it utilizes is often a graduation gift for graduating seniors, it works all the way up to your oldest kids, and then it works all the way down to your kids who are fluent readers. So now, if you're trying to use this resource with pre-kinders or kinders or even first graders, that would be a challenge. You'd have to do some major revising. But as long as your kiddos are readers, so third grade and up, then they should be able to use this with no problem. I would make some probably pre-teaching adjustments if I was using it with elementaries, maybe third or fourth graders or younger. I would pre-teach some vocabulary, like this one right here, momentous. A lot of our young ones aren't going to know that. I would pre-teach some concepts. For example, we're going to get into a tribe of storytellers, which is the human race. We've evolved as storytellers, and that's probably a new idea for most of our kids, even up through high school. But your high schoolers and your middle schoolers could probably just read this and go with it, whereas maybe your middle elementary kids are going to probably need some background explanation on this. And then the other way I would think you might want to differentiate it would be with reading, whether you're reading it to them or that you're reading it together, or they can read it all on their own. They don't need you to read it to them. So of course that would be just, whatever level you're working with, what seems most appropriate. So we jump in on this page kind of talking about how they're feeling and big feelings. And so let's talk about that for a moment. Obviously, for those of you out there who are school counselors and social workers, you know that we're all struggling right now with big feelings. And, what does that look like for kids? Sadness, irritability, sometimes unmotivation, a lot of unmotivation, actually, I think. Hunger in the form of like comfort foods. And it's funny, as I say this for kids, I'm thinking of like, I had to go out and buy a bag of like Twinkies and cookies and chocolate just for me, because that was my thing of like, I had to have a lot of comfort food that normally I would never eat because it's not very healthy. And so I think kids and adults sort of are dealing with a lot of the same thing. Now, how it looks for children might be different. So your sadness might look like a lot of crying. Your unmotivation, again, not being motivated to do schoolwork. I mean, you might have a kiddo who's been really motivated and could get a lot of work done, and now you're just seeing them kind of hit the wall. They can't do that. Irritability, a lot of times I think looks like instigating at home. So maybe you lived in a home with siblings that got along for the most part, and now they're just, getting under under each other's skin, or trying to push your buttons and instigate problems with you. So just a lot of different behaviors that we're seeing as a result of these big feelings. And so how would you handle that? Well, that's kind of where all of this comes in. I think the first thing that's important to do when you um, start to see some feelings and behaviors that either are unusual or just large, is listen. Ask a few questions and just listen and see where they're coming from. Because I think so often when we think we know what's going on, we don't always know what's going on. And then the second part after listening would be to give space and or engaging them in an activity. And so that's where, when we get into how are you feeling, we're really jumping in here to the kind of what's going on, kind of looking at the problem. And it's very purposeful that this resource has like one slide on looking at the problem and then 10 slides on now what can we do about it. So kind of moving forward from that. And so this part right here gives the kiddo a chance to either engage with you, talk with you about how they're feeling, or if they are not wanting to talk about it, or that's just not your reality, writing or drawing how they're feeling and then communicating it to you that way. And also kind of just validating all feelings that some people are really enjoying this, some people are devastated by it. It's all okay. Now, once you're done with this part, and so you've kind of they've gotten their feelings out, one way or another. And this is not a one-time thing. I mean, you might do this page every couple days, one day writing, another day drawing, another day talking, and then there's a new feeling. Okay, now we're going to start again. We're going to write, we're going to draw, we're going to talk. So you could do this how are you feeling page once, or you could bring it up as many times as you need it. But once you've gotten through this page, you can go into, all right, let's now look for solutions. Let's move forward. Let's start to figure out ways to kind of feel better. And that's where the storytelling piece comes in. And, we all know that the human race has evolved for millions of years to tell stories. And we can actually see in our brain, like if they measure brain waves and things, that when a human being hears a story, it's a very soothing and calming activity, within reason, as long as the story is not upsetting, I guess you would say. And so reading a story works the same way. So you're kind of explaining that to your student or your child, and then you're letting them know that y'all are going to pick a book. And I have a list here of books or stories or poems that I think work really well with this activity. My favorite is I Wish You More by Amy Rosenthal, which is the one that I mentioned is very often a graduation gift for seniors, kind of like Dr. Seuss's The Places You'll Go. But Winnie the Pooh and the House at Pooh Corner, the last chapter, I think it's the last chapter, but I know it's chapter 10. Chapter 10 of both of those books have wonderful themes of kind of saying goodbye and looking forward with hope. And as we know from Winnie the Pooh, I mean, some people have made a religion out of it. It's just super abstract, and that little kids can get what they need out of it, all the way up to adults can get what they need out of it. If you want something shorter and you want to go with a poem, Where the Sidewalk Ends, from the book Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein, is a great poem that looks at endings metaphorically, but from a child's perspective. So, I mean, just try and wrap your brain around that one. It's, typically our little kids don't always do real well with metaphors, but this is a child's metaphor, so it's perfect. And then Wishing, Hoping, and Knowing is a poem by Joanna Fuchs. She has a website, poemsource.org, which is fantastic. Tons and tons of poems in there. And any of these you can find by going to their websites or by looking on Amazon. What I would do is just put any of these titles into Google search engine and find them that way. So once you have your story picked out, and then of course, if you have your own story, like if you have the book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, and that's just, so special to your heart, and that's the book you want to read, as long as you're reading something that deals with endings, beginnings, and hope for the future, it's fine to choose something different. And these questions here should really relate to any book that has these themes. So before starting to read the book, it's a good idea to kind of preview these questions with the kiddos so that they sort of know what they're thinking about and what they're focusing on as you're reading the story to them or they're reading the story. And then, of course, read. And then we get to sort of the reflecting part where after the story's done, you're talking through, or if talking doesn't work, you're journaling through those questions that really get to, how is this something, what we're going through now? How is this something that might be difficult, but we can also turn it into something hopeful for the future and all the different aspects of that. So in terms of how you would do the reflecting, I think it's great if you can talk it out. If you're working with a class, maybe giving them an assignment where they're talking it out with a family member. If you're working with your own child, trying to have that conversation where you're just kind of going through these questions and discussing. That is not some people's reality. Some parents are trying to work and do their jobs from home, and then they maybe have multiple children, or if that's your reality, you have multiple children. And then we also have kids that don't want to talk, that they're happy to process and reflect, but not in a verbal way. And so an alternative to that is journaling. And I remember when I was in high school, no, I was in middle school actually, I had a teacher that was trying to teach me like some advanced English, but she had her own class. So she couldn't teach me one-on-one. It wasn't a tutoring situation. And so she started journaling with me on Romeo and Juliet, the book. I had to read it. And then she would ask me questions and I had to write my responses, and then she would write back what she thought of my responses. And I remember as a preteen, just thinking it was the most amazing thing because she had 200 students and I was aware of that. And here she was every week taking time to write personal responses to me about what I was reading and what I was experiencing. So I think if you have a situation or a kiddo where you can't talk with them about this activity, journaling is a wonderful, and for some, maybe even better option for how to go through the questions. Okay, so then once
Hey,
the
Stephanie.
reflecting is yes.
Sorry, we don't have any questions yet, but I do want you to know I'm using just the free version of Zoom, so it has the limit, and it has about 10 minutes for us to wrap up. But no questions.
Oh, no. Okay. Oh, I thought we had an hour. Well, I mean, we're basically at the end, and we might have some questions. So, let me kind of wrap it up here. This hope for the future is basically where you're taking that reflection piece and they're applying it by drawing and coloring some piece of artwork that shows their own hope, their own wish for the future. And there's an idea down here for how to turn it into a mosaic if that's something you want to do and you have the ability to do. And then the last piece of it is just kind of reminding kiddos that this isn't goodbye. We're not done with anything, that it's just a see you later. We don't know exactly when that will be or how that will look, but we know that there will be an after to all this chaos that's going on, and that, we'll all be back together again and doing what we normally do in schools. And so I think that that's kind of a sort of a reassuring note to end on. So with that, the only other thing I was going to do is talk briefly about some other resources they could use. But let me open it up to questions because we can always post other resources. If there's questions, I think that's any questions?
I don't see any questions yet. I just asked, but if anybody has a question, please feel free to use the chat again. I'm not seeing anybody, so if you have any more resources, we would love that. Oh, we have one question, Stephanie. Have you done these activities in a Zoom meeting? I was thinking about making it my end of the year activity.
Love it. Yes, absolutely. I have done them in a Zoom activity, but not with the whole class format. So I think, it's just like everything that we're going through right now. Try it out, see how it works, find what's comfortable for you. My husband is a teacher, and so he is working with a whole class. He's a math teacher. But so I, have him try out some of my whole class ideas, like from a teacher point of view. And so far, he feels like this is very doable. And he's done some of my cell lessons with his kiddos. But yeah, I think it would be a perfect end of year activity, and I think just structure it how you feel it would work best for your class.
One of the questions was, could this be something we pre-recorded if we couldn't do it live with students? And I know that I have been doing a lot of pre-recorded things using PowerPoint and also Screencast-to-be. But if you have any other suggestions on pre-recording, if you weren't able to do it live.
Yeah, well, and I wouldn't do it live actually, and that's kind of where my husband and I disagree, because he's like, no, you just get in there and you can do it with all, because he's doing that sort of thing with. I thought it was Google Hangouts, but evidently it's Google Hangouts Meet. Whatever. He has a master's in technology, so I do not. And he thinks it would be great to do it that way, but I wouldn't. What I would do is videotape myself teaching the lesson. Just like what you're seeing right here. And then I would upload that to my online platform, Google Classroom, whatever you have. And I would also upload the presentation for kids, and then instructions telling my kids how to go through it. If they were young with a family member, and involving the family member in that. If they were older on their own, or with a friend, Zoom with a friend, whatever. So, but I think, yeah, if a narrated PowerPoint would be fantastic. I haven't delved into that world yet. So anything, I mean, just try it however you try it, and let us know what works.
And what was the name of the website for the poems again?
Oh, poemsource.org.
Okay, I thought that's what you said, or I have a .com one as well, so I've linked that.
Oh, okay. It might be .com. It might be then.
But yes, I would just Google Poem Source, everybody, and I did send a link. And then there was one more email. Sorry, end of the year activities for the whole school. Is there a way to incorporate any of this for a whole school end of the year activity?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is something that every teacher in the school could do with their class. I think it would be hard. Well, maybe not. Maybe not with our new virtual situation we're in. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking it would be hard for one school counselor to facilitate this with the whole school. But I think if you could get your admin on board, so that all of the teachers were kind of pushing out, even you as the school counselor or the social worker could create the video, get the materials ready, have your admin on board to have teachers push it out to their classes, and then go at it from that direction. And I think that would be a really nice way to give everybody in the school closure, including the staff, on, I mean, just, like we were in school on Monday, and then Tuesday we were done for the year. So I think it would be good whole school wide.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. I'm going to keep looking. So if there's any other resources, we have about 6 minutes left.
Yes. Let me, okay. So for, basically the idea here is how do you meet their cell needs, like through the rest of the summer, because we all know this pandemic situation isn't going anywhere fast. So how do you continue to meet their cell needs? Well, like I mentioned with this presentation here, you can use it over and over and over again. If, let's say, you're home this summer with your own children. But if you needed additional resources, on my website, the same page that I sent you to find this presentation, is another one. It's a big green box, and it's something like COVID coping skills, love in the time of Corona, but you can't miss it. It's a big green box on that same page of my website. And that has different coping skills that you could work through, like let's say maybe one a week with your child over the summer that would help to meet their social emotional learning needs. The other resource that I have on my website is on my homepage, and it is a trauma post, because obviously we're all going through a traumatic situation with what's happening in the world. And in there are tons of resources for how you can kind of continue meeting the child's social emotional learning needs. And one in particular I really want to highlight. So again, this is on the homepage of my website. It's a post that I just posted like last week. You can't miss it. And it's something trauma in school counseling, or virtual school counseling and trauma, something like that. Homepage of my website. In that blog post, I talk about a resource from childmind.org, which is called, let me make sure I get it right, Anxiety and Coping with Coronavirus. So Anxiety and Coping with Coronavirus by childmind.org. And it's in my blog post. It's linked in my blog post. That is the best resource that I've come across for how parents can support their kiddos with social emotional learning resources during this time. Not that there aren't tons of good ones. There's amazing articles all over the internet and resources and ideas and tips. And I feel like I've read all of them because I'm working on 3 different books right now, which is insane. And as I'm working on these books, I'm having to add a virtual pandemic component to all these books. So I'm just reading everything I can find on this topic. And this childmind.org article, Anxiety and Coping with Coronavirus, yeah, is the best one that I would hand off to parents. And it is specifically for parents. So a wonderful resource on how to support your kids during this. But I think that's pretty much it for what I have.
That was childmind.org, correct?
Yes.
And the
And
book, and tell me the book title one more time.
it's